Flip monsters are some of the oldest effects in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! For a long time, flip cards were staples amongst every deck. However, with the speed of modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, flip monsters have fallen to the wayside. While there have been many attempts to recapture Flip's glory of old, with archetypes such as mimighoul and subterror, none have been quite as successful as the classic Jar cards. Many of the Jar cards follow a theme of being rock flip monsters, often with one eye and a sinister grin. This list is dedicated to the best of them and their lasting effects on the game to this day. And shattering our expectations for the number 10 spot, we have Jar of Greed, a normal trap card that is not a monster, but deserves a mention anyway. First released in 2003's Labyrinth of Nightmare, Jar of Greed has a large number of reprints, being a common card included in many starter and structure decks. Jar of Greed's effect is truly puzzling. Much like its cousin, Pot of Greed, no one is truly sure what this card does. However, I can confirm, after tireless hours of research and consultation with many scholars, the TheDuelLogs channel will be the first to reveal the true effect of Jar of Greed. When Jar of Greed is activated, you draw one card. Drawing cards in a trading card game is usually a good thing. However, there are not many generic cards that can do so without a drawback or requirement first. Jar of Greed has been very reliable since it came out, allowing you to draw a card the turn after setting it. While it doesn't allow you to go plus in card economy like a lot of other powerful cards do, it has remained unlimited during its entire lifespan in the TCG. Jar of Greed has seen competitive play from as early as 2006 to as late as 2016. Drawing through your deck faster has proved to be vital in the early years of Yu-Gi-Oh!, making it useful in decks like Exodia and Demise OTK. Additionally, it was an easy card to use in chain burn strategies, having no particular requirements and increasing the chain number on Chain Strike. Finally, with the rise of Paleozoics in 2016, Jar of Greed was used to trigger the Paleo effects in the grave, allowing them to special summon themselves into the field as normal monsters, all while getting to draw a card. Before anyone but actually bees, I know Jar of Greed isn't technically part of the Jar archetype, being a Greed archetype card instead. That being said, its consistent use throughout the history of the game earns it a spot on our Jar list. I'd also like to give a quick shout out to Jar of Avarice, who serves a quite similar role as Jar of Greed in trap decks. Don't fret though, as the rest of this list will consist of only monster cards, even if the next spot on our list doesn't have Jar in its name. And at number 9, we have Pot of the Forbidden, which despite being called a pot, fits all the Jar archetype themes. Pot of the Forbidden is a level 9 Earth Rock Flip monster with 2000 attack and 3000 defense. Its first printing was in Dimension of Chaos in 2015 and was reprinted the next year in the 2016 Megaton. Pot of the Forbidden's effect is that when it's flipped face up, you can choose one of 4 effects to activate. You can draw 2 cards, you can return all spell and traps on the field to their owner's hand, you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls, or you can look in your opponent's hand and shuffle 1 card back into their deck. While it has multiple effects, Pot of the Forbidden's activation is a hard once per turn, so choose carefully. The effects you choose from are similar to several powerful cards, those being Pot of Greed, Giant Trunade, Raigeki, and the Forceful Sentry. The forbidden part of Pot of the Forbidden might be a reference to the fact that all the cards it imitates, with the exception of Raigeki, were banned in 2015 at the time of Pot's release. While flip effects are typically too slow for the 2 or 3 turns in modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, the potential power of Pot of the Forbidden is enough to make it worth trying. This card's biggest issue is that it's a level 9, requiring 2 tributes to set. Luckily, there are several workarounds to being able to summon this card onto the field face down. In dedicated rock decks, Doki Doki, who also resembles a Jar card, can discard a rock monster to special summon a rock monster from the deck with the same attribute and level as the one discarded in face-up attack position or face-down defense position. Additionally, Gallet Granite is an Xyz monster that is commonly used in rock decks, whose effect can add any rock monster from deck to hand, or special summon a rock monster from hand to the field in face-down defense position by detaching a material. Another deck that can summon Pot of the Forbidden easily is Prediction Princess, a flip-themed archetype. Prediction Princess Koinorma has a flip effect to summon a level 3 or higher flip monster from your deck in face-down defense position, although it will prevent you from activating any non-prediction effects for the rest of the turn. Another card that can help is Prediction Princess Tarote, a ritual monster that can summon a flip monster face down from your hand or graveyard during the end phase. Additionally, she has a hard once per turn quick effect to flip a face down monster to face up attack or vice versa. Heck, if you're really in a pinch, you can use the Shallow Grave to summon Pot of the Forbidden from the graveyard in face down defense position, as long as you don't mind your opponent summoning a card face down too. While Pot of the Forbidden can be summoned by these effects, the same can apply to many of the other Jar cards on our list. Unlike Pot of the Forbidden, the other Jar cards are low levels that can be set without any extra help. Still, it earns a spot on the list for just how strong its effects can be when successfully activated. And Aroma Jar is here to excite your senses as the number 8 spot on our list. Despite looking more like an essential oil diffuser, Konami considers this card a jar. Staying accurate to oil diffusers, they made this a win attribute level 1 rock flip monster. Aroma Jar has 500 attack, 400 defense, and came out in 2015's Clash of Rebellions, and just like Path of Forbidden, was reprinted in the 2016 Megaton. Aroma's Jar effect is that once flipped up, it can't be destroyed by battle as long as it remains face up on the field. Also, after it's been flipped, you gain 500 life points during each player's end phase. Battle Destruction immunity might be one of the most annoying ways to immobilize an OTK, as your opponent will have already invested most of the resources before hitting the wall. Imagine summoning a full board of the meanest monsters in your deck just to be stopped by a candle set. If your Aroma Jar is flipped as a result of battle, not only have you wasted one monster's attack, but to get around Aroma Jar without ceding the battle phase, your opponent will be forced to commit a quick effect destruction or negation. This makes Aroma Jar a good card to stall with when combined with Floodgates like Lose One Turn or Dimensional Barrier. Aroma Jar's second effect to gain life points is part of its membership to the Aroma archetype, a plant deck that benefits from getting life points and having more life points than your opponent. The candle colors of Aroma Jar even represent the 4 Aromages that release in the same set. However, Aroma Jar's synergy with the deck is hampered by its rock typing in a deck built around plant monsters. While Aroma Jar's effects are decent, it lacks the oomph that is expected of a flip monster in the modern era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Other cards do the same thing, but better, like mimicking Maneater Bug. While the bug can't gain life points, it cannot be destroyed by battle, which is the more important effect anyway. On top of that, mimicking Maneater Bug, when it destroys a monster, gains the attack of that monster and copies its typing, also gaining protection from monster effect destruction from cards of the stolen type. Too bad he's not a jar though. Jar Reverse is 7 number at incoming. Coming at number 7 is Reverse Jar. It's a level 3 Earth Rock flip monster with 800 attack and 900 defense. Reverse Jar was released in 2022's Dimension Force and was later reprinted in the 25th Anniversary 10 Dueling Heroes Mega Pack. Reverse Jar has a flip effect that changes as many other monsters on the field as possible to face down defense position, then returns as many face-up spells and traps on the field as possible to their owner's hand. Afterwards, each player can set spells and traps equal to the number of spells and traps that were returned to their hand. This effect can only be activated once per turn. The first part of Reverse Jar's effect is very similar to another card that commonly sees competitive play, Book of Eclipse. While having to resolve the effect on a flip is slower than a quick play spell, Reverse Jar doesn't let your opponent draw cards and isn't vulnerable to Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Also, in dedicated flip decks, you can use the effect to flip your other flip monsters face down, resetting them for another flip summon. While both Reverse Jar and Book of Eclipse are bad at combating link decks, a set Book of Eclipse can be activated at any time, a luxury not afforded to Reverse Jar. This allows Book of Eclipse to flip the materials used for link summons face down, preventing them from being used for link materials. Reverse Jar's second effect is similar to Giant Trunade, but much more situational. You can take advantage of this to set different traps or quick play spells on your opponent's turn that would be more beneficial than the spells or traps you previously had on the field. A far more punishing move would be to keep an Anti-Spell Fragrance or World Decree set, which you can activate after they set their spells and traps with Reverse Jar's effect. Anti-Spell Fragrance would prevent your opponent from replaying any spells they set for at least one turn, while World Decree would prevent them from playing any traps they set at all. If you're feeling spicy, then when Reverse Jar is destroyed by battle, if it was your only monster and returned all the spells and traps you had on the field, you can choose to set nothing and instead activate Evenly Match at the end of the battle phase. While Reverse Jar hasn't seen competitive play, it has a lot of potential as a stall card, as it can effectively shut down your opponent's turn and offer an alternative way to temporarily remove floodgates that counter your deck. It will never be the star of a stall deck, but any card that can buy you a turn helps. Number 6 on our list is Yugioh Jar, a level 3 Earth Rock flip monster with 700 attack and 800 defense. Yugioh Jar was first released as recently as 2023 in Duelist Nexus, and was reprinted in the 25th Anniversary 10 Dueling Mirrors. Yugioh Jar has a hard once per turn flip effect, where at first you excavate any number of cards on the top of your deck up to the number of cards your opponent controls. If you do, you add one of those cards to your hand, then send the rest to the graveyard. Afterward, you immediately send monsters from your extra deck to the graveyard up to the number of monsters your opponent controls that were summoned from the extra deck. The effect of excavating cards from the deck to the graveyard has always been good, considering how many good cards activate their effects in the grave. Because Yugioh Jar's mill works on all cards and not just monster cards, there is the potential to draw one and mill up to 12 cards, if your opponent has a full field with both extra monster zones occupied. While the case is extremely unlikely, It should be easy to mill 3 or more cards using Grin Jar. Its second effect of sending cards from your extra deck to the graveyard is supposed to be a downside, but if you have the space, you can put monsters that want to go to the graveyard in your extra deck. Great cards to send to the graveyard include, but are not limited to, Elder Entity Natis, who can target and destroy 1 card on the field, Herald of the Arclight, which can add a ritual monster or spell from deck to hand, and even something like Deep Sea Prima Donna, who can target and shuffle a banished card back into the deck. Grin Jar has all of the hallmarks of what makes a powerful card, with almost no use in competitive play. Flip monsters are often overlooked for competitive play, and this is a relatively new one. However, Grin Jar's effects are possibly just as strong as the monsters higher in our list, several of which are on the Forbidden and Limited list. And rolling in at number 5 is Dice Jar. This gambling goober is a level 3 light rock flip monster with 200 attack and 300 defense. Dice Jar was first released in Pharaonic Guardian in 2003 and was last reprinted in Legendary Collection 4, Joey's World in 2013. But as perfect as this card seems for Joey Wheeler, he never used it in the anime. Dice Jar has a flip effect involving, you guessed it, dice. And let's just say I know a thing or two about dice. When Dice Jar is flipped face up, both players roll a 6-sided die, and whoever rolls the lowest takes damage equal to 500 times the result. And if the winner rolls a 6, the loser takes 6,000 damage instead. If the result is a tie, both players roll again until there isn't one. Taking 6,000 damage off of one effect is insane, considering you only start with 8,000 life points. While the odds of you rolling a 6 on a 6-sided die are only 16.6%, Dice Jar can even the odds by using the card That 6, which lets you change the result of a dice roll. That 6 is a continuous trap which can change a die roll of 1, 3, or 5 into a 6, or a roll of 2, 4, or 6 into a 1. Because you can use this effect each time a player rolls a die, you can change your die roll or your opponent's. This increases the odds of getting a 6 from 16.6% to 66.6%, while also guaranteeing that your opponent can never roll a 6. Even though you can shore up your chances by using that 6, Dice Jar has seen competitive play without it. Dice Jar's potential to ignite 75% of your opponent's starting life points makes it a good candidate for burn decks. One copy of Dice Jar was even being played in the main deck of Ryan Yu's Chain Burn, which got first place in the 2017 World Championship Dragon Duel. But as powerful as burning someone for 6,000 damage is, the randomness of dice does hold Dice Jar back, and has kept Dice Jar off their bidden list, unlike the last 4 cards on our top 10. Morphing Jar number 2 is actually our number 4 on this list. The jar is a level 3 rock flip monster with a total 800 attack and 700 defense. This classic card debuted in the first year of the TCG in 2002's Pharaoh's Servant, and has had many reprints since. Morphing Jar number 2's flip effect shuffles all monsters in the field back into the deck. Afterwards, each player must excavate cards from the top of their deck until they reveal the same number of monsters as those shuffled back into the deck. All excavated level 4 or lower monsters that can be specialed are summoned in face-down defense position, while the rest of the excavated cards go to the graveyard. Extra deck monsters get shuffled back into the extra deck, but don't count towards the number of monsters needed for excavation. While this limit can limit the number of cards excavated, it has the benefit of not triggering monster effects that work when they leave the field, such as Elemental Hero Absolute Zero or Reborn Tengu. This effect makes Morphing Jar number 2 great for both mill and flip decks. Mill decks revolve around sending cards from either you or your opponent's deck to the graveyard or banishment. Self-mill decks are often designed to gain benefits off of cards that activate their effects in the graveyard. When a deck is designed to mill your opponent's deck, it's to make them lose the game by running out of cards. How well Morphing Jar number 2 works at milling your opponent's deck is heavily reliant on the monsters to spell and trap card ratio of their deck. Whether your opponent special summons any monsters from their excavation is also subject to how many low-level monsters they run in their deck, as well as luck. If your deck has other low-level flip monsters, you can set them up to use their flip effects on the next turn, skipping the turn normally used to set them. If your deck is very spell or trap card heavy, you could potentially mill off most of it with one activation of Morphing Jar number 2. This reason might have been why the card was banned in 2014. Jackpot 7 was released 1 month later, a card that can win you the game by having 3 copies banish themselves from the graveyard after being sent there by an opponent's effect. If you give your opponent Morphing Jar number 2 with a card like Creature Swap and then force flip it, it's possible to send all 3 copies of Jackpot 7 from your deck to the graveyard, winning you the duel instantly. But Konami doesn't seem to be too worried about that anymore, as Morphing Jar number 2 was unbanned in January of 2020. Morphing Jars number 2's mill capabilities are strong, but inconsistent. When you can mill a lot of cards, you're also shuffling cards back in, For those looking for a more consistent mill, our next card is sure to hit that sweet spot. And coming in number 3, we have Morphing Jar. Sometimes you just can't beat the original. Morphing Jar is a level 2 rock flip monster with 700 attack and 800 defense. Originally, the only way to get this card was from tournament packs 2 and 4, where it was a high rarity pull. Morphing Jar didn't get a mass market release until 2005 in Dark Beginning 2, and has been reprinted many times since. Morphing Jar's effect is that when it's flipped face up, both players discard as many cards as possible from their hand, and then each player draws 5 cards. It's hard to say just how good this effect is. While discarding your entire hand is bad, you can just play or set as many cards as possible first, reducing the amount of cards discarded, if any at all. Mutually drawing 5 new cards is powerful, but risky. With the amount of 1-card starters in Modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, it's unlikely that your opponent will only draw garnets. So what makes Morphing Jar great? Well, the same thing that made Morphing Jar number 2 great, mill power. While the cards don't get sent directly from the deck to the graveyard, they are still leaving the deck faster than normal. And if you can flip Morphing Jar face down and face up multiple times at the same turn, you could potentially mill your opponent's deck out in 1 turn. But in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh!, empty jar strategies were designed to do just that. Combining Morphing Jar with cards like Book of Moon and Book of Taiyu to keep flipping it face down and face up, you could use Morphing Jar's effect multiple times in 1 turn, with spell reproduction, returning whichever spell you needed from your graveyard back to your hand. The finishing blow came by keeping track of the cards in your opponent's hand and their deck, then hitting them with a combination of card destruction and serial spell, which copied the former card's effect at the cost of discarding your hand. This would force your opponent to have to draw more cards than in their deck, forcing them a game loss to deck out. While this was probably Morphing Jar's brightest moment of the competitive scene, it was far from its only. Morphing Jar consistently appears throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history in a multitude of decks, such as Monarchs, Teledad, Gladiator Beasts, Zombies, X-Sabers, and more. It was even banned in April of 2014, although it did get unbanned in September of 2018, faster than its cousin, Morphing Jar number 2. Even though Morphing Jar is an extremely powerful card, it has been weakened by the rise of stronger hand traps. Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, and Drill and Lockbird are commonplace in the modern game, all of which can stop a Morphing Jar's mill strategy. There's a reasonable chance that your opponent could even draw one of these cards off of Morphing Jar's effect, and on top of that, what if I told you Morphing Jar wasn't even the best jar in the empty jar deck? That jar is a little higher on the list. And with 2 spots remaining, can you guess which spot it took? If you guessed it was number 2, sorry, but you lost, because our number 2 spot goes to Fiber Jar. This jar-shaped overgrown tree is a level 3 earth plant flip monster with an even 500 attack and defense. Fiber Jar was first printed in Legacy of Darkness and was reprinted 2 more times in Dark Beginning 2 and Legendary Collection 4, Joey's World. Fiber Jar has a flip effect that causes each player to shuffle all cards from their hand, field, and graveyard back into the deck. Then each player draws 5 cards. So the intention behind this card is to get out of a bad situation by resetting the duel. If the effect is successfully activated, it could be devastating for the turn player, who at this point probably used their normal summons as well as many hard ones per turn effects. When Yu-Gi-Oh! Was slower, this effect could buy you multiple turns of survival, whereas now it might just save you for a single turn. Unfortunately, we can't know for sure because Fiber Jar has been banned since 2005, with no signs of coming off the ban list anytime soon, knock on wood. This is probably because, similar to other banned cards like Self-Destruct Button, Fiber Jar encourages a style of gameplay that Konami frowns upon. They don't like you stalling for time to run out and round. Interestingly enough, Fiber Jar doesn't mention banished cards. This opens up possibilities for a deck that heavily uses banished cards to start with additional resources when the game is reset by Fiber Jar. Such decks include, but are not limited to, Grand Maju, Floowandereeze, Ghoti, and Thunder Dragons. On the other hand, if your opponent uses cards that banish for costs like Pot of Extravagance or Pot of Desires, their deck will be reset by Fiber Jar with a significant disadvantage. In the Duel Monsters anime, Joey uses card against My Valentine in the episode My Freaky Valentine Part 2. Harpy Lady attacked a face-down Fiber Jar and activated its effect, only to be negated by Harpy's Featherstorm. Fiber Jar, while good, suffers from a lot of the same problems as other jar cards, namely powerful hand traps. When using a card like Fiber Jar, you're probably desperate and relying on it to save you in a moment of dire need. However, you could just Drowning Mirror Force if you want to spin all your opponent's attack position monsters. It's also at 3 copies and a trap card, meaning you don't have to use your normal summon. With that being said, now onto the MVP of all jar cards. Our number 1 spot goes to Cyber Dragon. This legally distinct Death Star is a level 3 dark rock flip monster sporting 900 attack and defense. Cyber Jar was first released in Magic Ruler in 2002, with its most recent release in the quarter-century Bonanza. Cyber Jar's flip effect destroys all monsters on the field, and then both players reveal the top 5 cards of their decks. All level 4 or lower monsters that can be special summoned must be special summoned in face-up attack position or face-down defense position. All other cards are added to the hand. If there are less than 5 cards left in a player's deck, that player reveals as many as possible instead. At first, Cyber Jar might not seem as good for milling your opponent's deck as Morphing Jar is. However, one of the key factors that makes Cyber Jar better for this task is the fact your opponent's hand size continues to grow. The bigger the hand size, the more cards they'll need to draw when card destruction is used. This means Cyber Jar needs to activate itself fewer times to mill your opponent down. Cyber Jar destroying itself with its effect presents a problem, but one that's actually easily solved with the Shallow Grave, which allows each player to special summon a monster from the graveyard in face-down defense position. But what about hand traps, you say? Well, Cyber Jar can work around many of the common hand traps that plague other jars, since those are low-level monsters that would be summoned to the field rather than added to the hand. This would leave your opponent to only add hand traps that are trap cards, or level 5 or higher hand trap monsters. But even if you're not trying to mill at your opponent, Cyber Jar can also flood your field with monsters. It also synergizes the monsters that can activate their effects on destruction, like Mystic Potato or Baby Sarasaurus. Cyber Jar can even be used with monsters that can't be destroyed by card effects, such as Eldritch the Golden Lord or Darkhold Dragon, to maintain field control after the destruction effect occurs. Floodgates like Rivalry of the Warlords and Gozen Match can be used before Cyber Jar's effect to force your opponent to summon many cards in face-down defense position, or can be used after to force your opponent to send face-up monsters summoned by the effect to the graveyard. While decks that don't use a normal summon usually run another deck engine, it's possible to run Cyber Jar in those same decks if they're a synergy. In competitive play, Cyber Jar was used in many top-placing decks and tournaments until it was banned in April of 2006. It came off the ban list in the TCG on the October 2022 list, but hasn't seen much play since then. In the anime, Cyber Jar was used in several duels, where its destruction effect had a different animation. When Bandit Keith, under the control of Merrick, uses Cyber Jar on Yugi, the monster on the fields do their standard shattering destruction effect. When the Kyber Corp dueling computer uses Cyber Jar against Kaiba, it fires a beam from its eye like a Death Star. Finally, in both of Cyber Jar's virtual world appearances, its eye acts as a black hole. And that's our list. If you thought of a different jar card that should be on this list, or have an idea for a different list of objects in the Yu-Gi-Oh world, let us know down in the comments below. We'd love to see your suggestions.